So the first video you just watched shows you how to solve a quadratic equation by using the square root method. So very similar to just solving a regular equation, except for at some point you have to take the square root. The other method I'm going to show you today is how to solve it by graphing, which most students tend to find a little easier. So it's always good to, go the easy route. So let me show you how to solve quadratics by graphing. So your solution is where the parabola crosses the x-axis. So you graph it, put it in Desmos, and voila, your solution is where it crosses the x-axis. These are called the solutions, the roots, the zeros. So that's going to be a word that pops up often. So zeros, x-intercepts of the equation. So one question might say find the solution. Another one might say find the roots. Another one might say find the zeros. Another one might say find the x-intercepts. They all mean the same thing. They mean where does it cross the x-axis? So that is your solution when you're solving by graphing. So there can be two solutions, one solution, or no real solution. So it could be 2, 1, or 0. So looking at this first one, this is my x-axis here, maybe a little bit hard to see here. So let me put in my x and y coordinate plane. So this one is the x-axis. Okay. And same thing for this one. This is the x and y. And then this one is the x and y. So this is the x and this is the y. This is the x, and the other one is the y. So let me choose a different color here. All right, so my parabola is up here. So your solution is where it crosses the x-axis. This parabola up here does not cross the x-axis. It's way up here. So it is not crossing this x-axis down here, the pink. So we say there is no real solution. So in a few days, I'll show you how to find the imaginary solutions. But for right now, since it does not cross the x-axis, there is no solution. The second one, I can see that it touches right here. It touches once. This is actually called a double root, which I'll talk about in a few days. So it only touches the x-axis once, which is why it says there's one solution there. So that word there is one. It's a little hard to see. And this last one here, here is my x-axis here. I see that it touches once right here. And I see that it touches again. So that's why it says that there are two solutions. So we can have no solution, we can have one solution, or we can have two real solutions. So your solution is where the parabola crosses the x-axis. It can cross not at all, it can cross once, or it can cross twice. So let me show you how it's real simple. Just put it in Desmos and get your answer. Before you just put it in Desmos, though, you have to make sure your equation equals 0. So this is very, very important. Before you just do your thing and graph it, which I don't mind, make sure your quadratic equation is equal to 0, and you would graph that part of the quadratic equation. So if I go through here, I got some examples that we'll take a look at, and then we'll graph them in Desmos. So the directions say solve the following quadratics by graphing. So x squared plus 10x equals negative 24. I cannot type this in just as it is. I need to move this negative 24 to the other side. So the opposite of a negative 24 is to add 24 to both sides, because we know that's the opposite. And we're going to add 24 on this side. Now, these are not like terms. One's an x squared, one's a regular x, and one's a number. So none of these three terms are the same. So I would just write my answer out as x squared plus 10x plus 24. So I don't have any like terms. I cannot combine anything. So I'll leave it just like this. Now my equation is equal to 0. And in just a minute, we're going to take this equation and we're going to graph it in Desmos. You would only graph this part of the equation. So make sure your equation is equal to 0 before you graph it. Let's try another one. Number 2, 3x squared plus 3 equals negative x. So this is not equal to 0. I see a negative x on this side, so we need to add x to both sides. Most of the time, I can't say all the time, but most of the time they will not be like terms. Most of the time you'll have your quadratic piece, which in this case is 3x squared. You'll have your linear piece, which in this case is the positive x, so it's x to the first power. And then you'll have your constant term, which is plus 3. So none of these are like terms. And I did write my answer in order from the biggest exponent to the smallest. So this is my biggest exponent all the way down to my constant. So just a minute, we'll go graph this in Desmos. And the last one, x squared plus 10x plus 25. Lucky us, this equation is already equal to 0, so we don't have to do anything whatsoever but simply graph it in Desmos. So the take-home point here, I do not mind you graphing it, sticking it in, see where it crosses the x-axis. However, I do want to make sure that you know how to set your equation equal to 0 before you just use Desmos. Now we can go through and I can use Desmos, and I've already graphed mine. Okay. So this is the first one we just took a look at. X squared plus 10x plus 24. And so I got some different ones in here. This one, I don't think I worked out the first one, so excuse me for that. But the other ones I think we did work out. So let me see what I got here. Oh, it is x squared plus 10x plus 24. So we're ready to rock and roll. So I already put this one in here. We're looking for where it crosses the x-axis. So it crosses the x-axis at this point here and at this point here. Sometimes it'll be whole numbers, integers, we can easily see. Other times we'll need to trace it around and see what the exact point is. But these are pretty simple to see that it crosses at -6 and -4. So I have a point here at -6, 0, and then my other one is -4, 0. So Desmos, again, does a good job of telling you that. Sometimes it may work out to be a pretty number, so to speak. Sometimes it might be decimals, but these are my two solutions. So for the first example, I have two real solutions, and those solutions are -6, 0 and -4, 0. So that's the answer for the first one that we took a look at. Let's take a look at the second one. Your solution is where it crosses the x-axis. This parabola is not crossing the x-axis down here. So you guessed it, there is no real solution. So there's no solution for this problem, and that's all that you would put. You would say no solution because it does not cross the x-axis. The last one that we took a look at, x squared plus 10x plus 25. This one only touches the x-axis once, so this is called a double root. And specifically, it's at -5, 0, so it only touches once. So this one has one solution. So if I put them all up there at the same time, the purple one had two solutions. It was -6 and -4. The black one had no solution because it didn't cross at all. And the red one had one solution because it only crossed once. Now, I do want to show you that these have the same answer. So the square root method and the graphing method give you the same answer. Whether you want to try to solve it by solving an equation and taking the square root, or whether you want to solve it by graphing, it's going to give you the same answer. So this last one that I have on Desmos is the previous one from the other video that I showed you when I showed you how to take a square root. 4x squared minus 240. You can change your window. You can zoom in or out so you can get a better picture. However, I'm not concerned about that because my solution is where it crosses the x-axis. So I can see that I have a solution over here and I have a solution over here. So this is the same exact answer that we got in the previous video when I showed you how to solve this equation by taking the square root. So one of my answers is -7.7 if I round to the nearest 10th, and my other one is +7.7. Do note that for every single root, 0, solution, x-intercept, 0 should be your y-coordinate. So if I put all of these up here at the same time, 0 should be your y-coordinate. If I look here, it's -5, 0 is your y-coordinate. If I take a look here, this point is -6, 0, and this point over here is -4, 0. So when you're graphing, hopefully that'll stand out to you, that 0 should be your y-intercept. So your y-coordinate, excuse me. So hopefully you found the graphing method very straightforward. And now when you solve your problems, you can graph them or take the square root. Even though graphing will probably be a little simpler for you, you can just graph it in Desmos.